All
Yeah,
right,
for sure.
so what is up, everybody? We have some stuff to run through as far as governance goes. We're also joined by the Pendle team this week. They will be walking through how their product works, how you guys can interact with it, so on and so forth. A couple key things. So first things first, there are two votes on Snapshot right now. The first one is the Operation Strategic Asset Committee vote. Basically, the goal of this proposal is to provide the policy team with a little more autonomy and flexibility with regards to some of the less strategic assets that are in the Treasury. Basically, they want the autonomy to be able to sell some of the less strategic assets for more strategic assets without the need to go to a community vote every single time. That'll make it a lot easier for all of them to handle going forward. And I will share that proposal here in the call chatter and then the actual vote here. So people have until March 12th, I believe, to vote on that. The next one is the RIP for burning the unvested P tokens. So we actually don't have a use for those P tokens anymore. Essentially, they were going to originally be used, I think, to compensate some of the core team, but we found other more efficient ways to do that. So we had these like extra P tokens just laying around. And so this vote votes to burn those and kind of removes some uncertainty around the P tokens and the P token supply. Again, that vote also ends on March 12th. I will share it in the call chatter thing. Go vote on that so we can get it across the finish line. As far as some of the other stuff, let's see what we have. Okay, so uh, I guess we need to talk about the decrease in the yield that recently happened. So not too long ago, we did this road to V2 snapshot vote that basically allowed the DAO to enact a policy that if the spot price of Butterfly is below 125% of the backing per token for more than 8 hours, then the staking emissions would be reduced to 0.2025% or something like that over 7 days. That ended up occurring a couple of days ago, if I'm remembering correctly. And so as a result, the team decided to start the actual APY rate reduction. I think the reduction brings it down to an APY of like 1011%, assuming that 92% of the butterfly is staked. If there's any questions on that, feel free to ask in the call chatter, but I think that's pretty straightforward. I will share the actual vote itself that people voted on to kind of clarify why that decision was made. So that's also in the call chatter. Let's see. Okay, as far as APY, there was another proposal that was brought forward, which is an update to the proposal I just mentioned, the Road to Redacted V2. The hidden hand launch is probably coming sooner than we expected, and so a reward rate reduction, an additional reward rate reduction was proposed to bring the staking APY down to 100%. But just to clarify that this proposal is very much still in discussion phase, and not everybody agrees with it. So there's no immediate rush to move forward on this. We want to make sure that we have an open discussion around that rate reduction, and there's no like rush to get it on Snapshot tomorrow or anything like that. Cool. So next thing, the Kosamada is in full swing. So this week we've added a little over $1.35 million in liquidity to the Butterfly ETH curve pool, and we'll continue to add more as the Kosamada continues to build up. I'm pretty sure we're allowed to just borrow using the Kosamada anytime there's a rebase, as I'm pretty sure the way it works. Currently, the Butterfly ETH pool is at $4.8 million. So liquidity is constantly growing, which is, of course, a good thing. More liquidity, the more we can kind of allow people to trade in and out of Butterfly without affecting the price in some big, dramatic way. Sammy, is there anything you want to add onto the liquidity thing?
Yeah, it was actually more like we added like 5 million, if I'm not mistaken. Five
So,
million in liquidity.
so it's actually a lot more than the last time we highlighted it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And
cool.
like there's another proposal coming soon where we're sort of like working with some other partners and reworking the okay, give me a sec, let me close the window.
Make sure to close the window so nothing flies in and hits you, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, bro, stay safe out there. Don't leave the window open.
Um, yeah, I don't want anyone like creeping up on me or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so no, like we're reworking like the voting strategy to like, even further optimize the liquidity, and like leverage like the POL that we have to like extract more CVX and CRV in rather than just like pulling in Vodium tokens, as well as like, exploring different bribing options beyond Vodium and stuff too. So liquidity deployment is going really well. I think we're at like 15%. Yeah, like 15% POL to market cap ratio. So it's going like we're hitting the KPIs like way earlier than we expected, which is pretty good.
It's always bullish when you hit KPIs quicker than expected. Cool. So that's a lot of the big updates on the liquidity and governance side. Kieran, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else onto the Cosamata stuff, or if we basically hit everything.
Yeah, I mean, so we launched with the butterfly ETH pool on Curve. So that was like a modification of the original Cosmata concept where we're using the staking distributor to mint new butterfly, but we're just using like wrapped ether that we bonded. What we want to do is we also want to move to actually strengthen the original like own butterfly pool that we had using the original concept, which was to like use the incur debt functionality of the Olympus V2 treasury to stake our ohm and simultaneously borrow against it. And so we spoke to ohm, and they're willing to, if I remember correctly, like they're going to give us like a 75% LTV like debt facility. So that'll be a really good way to like boost liquidity as well. So that's something that we're going to be moving to do as well.
Perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. So more liquidity is coming, everybody. So no need to worry, which is always a good thing. Okay, so that's a lot of the key stuff on the governance liquidity side. The I guess Figgy, I'll let you take the stage a bit on the Sicarios, and so you can explain what that is and how that
for
ties
sure.
into governance, moderation, etc.
So as you guys can see within the server, like a couple of people have gotten a different role. This is the Sicario role mod. So essentially they're the mods within the server and they'll be helping a lot on any discussions going on with governance, help assisting with really like keeping those chats active, pushing a lot of people to Commonwealth so you guys know what's going on within the DAO and understand what's happening, as well as they'll be helping out any basic questions within general. Even as soon as we open up our conservatory branch more and more with different projects, you'll see them helping out a lot. But if you guys have any questions, like I would go directly to those Sicarios. They'll be helping out, answering questions. If you guys want to help out yourselves with any of the projects going on, you can go to them. They'll send you the links for any of the Airtables to submit any projects you guys would like to open up. So basically, like those are your go-tos. And then if you guys have some like in-depth, maybe more technical questions, just feel free to tag any of the head honchos, and we'll be more than happy to answer some of the questions going on. Right?
Cool, sweet. So shout out to the Sicarios. They'll be acting basically as like these governance stewards on the Commonwealth forums, as well as like governance discussions on Discord, helping moderate the Discord, helping do all of like the really important stuff for keeping the Discord, the forums, so on and so forth, clean and organized, and making sure conversation stays on track and stuff like that. Sammy, have you ever played Counter-Strike Global Offensive? This is an important question, by the way.
I suck at it, but yeah, I have.
So somebody asked in the general chat earlier today if we would be able to actually accumulate CS:GO knives to the treasury. Do you think that would be possible?
I can't believe you actually asked.
Putting me on the spot here, you're leaking the alpha.
Don't tell them we're
Can we
accepting bribes
tokenize
on
this in-game
CS:GO.
assets?
Soon PM. Soon
Okay, so
PM.
so CS:GO knives to the treasury will definitely be a thing. On a on a real note, are we going to is there any other like alpha stuff we want to bring up and before we move on to talking some Pendle stuff now that Never Define's up here, any stuff we want to bring up? Can't say no.
I think like let's do the Pendle stuff, and then we can dive into some of the stuff we'll talk about next week.
Cool. Let's do it. So, Tien and Dan, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the community call. I will give you guys the stage. Could you first start by one, introducing yourselves, and then two, introducing Pendle Finance a little bit?
Yeah, so thanks a lot for having the both of us in your community. It's very refreshing to participate in a call as a speaker, not as an audience. So our team has been a big fan of what Redacted has done, and yeah, it's really great to be here first and foremost. So thank you for having us. So I'm Tien, co-founder of Pendle, and Dan is with me. He's leading the growth efforts at Pendle. And recently, we have listed the Butterfly asset on Pendle to enable the trading of the APY of Butterfly. So, at a high level, Pendle is a protocol that enables the trading and the tokenization of yield. So, basically, what we're looking to achieve here is to tokenize the APY of various assets across a broad spectrum of DeFi venues, and really just allow people to either hedge to sell away their yield exposure, right? To hedge their positions or to speculate on the yield itself. Dan, have you got something else to add?
Yeah, so I guess to give a little bit more clarity, to give example of what has happened over the past couple of weeks. So we've seen many different strategies of people speculating on the yield of Repex Butterfly, and one of the more famous examples that happened on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, as a couple of days ago.
I was gonna ask about this, so please dive into that example.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I assume you were gonna ask about Froyo Friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it was a tweet from Froyo Friend saying that he got a 300,000% APY on Repex Butterfly, um, with no liquidation risk. So, but that was the yield at that time. So how, at a higher level, how Pendle works is that you can buy the pure yield of the asset or sell away the pure yield for the asset to lock in that future rate. So what Froyo did back then was buy the pure yield, which in our apps happens by purchasing an asset called YT, YT Repex Butterfly. And by purchasing YT Repex Butterfly, he's basically purchasing the yield exposure at at a levered rate. And he found that YT was trading at a very cheap price back then, and he purchased YT and at a cheap price, and he got 300,000% APY at that point in time. Currently, the APY has been significantly dropping, and we've seen a lot of people taking the other side where people sell away that future APY, locking the rate that the YT was trading at that point in time. So in Pendle, mainly there are two main use cases where you can either lever up on the future APY if you think that the yield is trading for a cheap price in Pendle, or you can lock in the current rate that the yield is trading at and Pendle. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yes. Right. So allow me to just use an example, maybe a more simplified one with a lot less numbers, so that it's easier to illustrate the proposition, right? Now, let's suppose today, if you are looking to get some yield exposure on Aave, right? So Aave as a lender, let's say if you deposit USDC, you will be entitled to lending rate. And let's just say the lending APY for USDC today on Aave is 2%. Now, so for you as a user, right? If you want to get that exposure, first you have to have $100, for example, deposit into the pool to get that 2% yield exposure. And in a year's time, you will be getting $2 of interest, assuming status quo, assuming that the APY remain consistent during the staking duration. Now, so you spend $100 to deposit into the pool just to get the yield exposure, right? But in the case of Pendle, because Pendle will split up the yield bearing asset into the principal component and yield component, effectively speaking, right, Pendle tokenizes the APY itself. So this 2% APY is represented in the YT asset that Dan mentioned earlier. So with the same amount of capital, let's say if just as a follow-up, right, using the same $100 that you have, instead of having to deposit into the pool to get the 2% yield exposure, you can effectively buy the YT asset, which is representing the APY component, and increase your exposure. So this is effectively the strategy that the tweet that Dan mentioned highlighted. Yeah, so it's really just much more capital efficient way to speculate on yield.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And so maybe we can even zoom out a little bit further and kind of talk about why separating yields into, or separating the tokens into these ownership tokens and yield tokens allows this. Like how does that work at a fundamental level? The separation of the yield and the underlying asset, for example.
Yeah, so I think it would help to go back to the motivation, right, of starting Pendle altogether. So one of the things that we realized when we started Pendle in late 2020 was the lack of tools and mechanics that allows users to lock in the rates. Again, when today, if we most of the time, right, when we participate in DeFi venues, the rates are very volatile. There's hardly any way for us to lock in the rates, right? Again, using Aave or Compound as example, when you deposit USDC or any kind of assets into the pools, you are entitled to lending rates, but you cannot be sure of the rates that you'll be getting, because because the protocol is designed in a way that does not quite allow for that to happen. So in view of that, right, we thought that it might be interesting for us to come up with a solution to address that need. Again, the from our perspective, we believe that with more people getting into DeFi and participating in DeFi venues, the yield exposure, I mean, people naturally will be exposed to all these different DeFi venues and have yield exposure. And it is human, like part of human psychology, right, to want certainty. And I think having that avenue and the ability for people to lock in the rates would be quite essential. So we recognize yield bearing assets as a source of liquidity, right, in our design. And this is because there's already a lot of yield bearing assets that's circulating. And the stripping of the yield itself from the yield bearing assets basically allows these two components to be traded independently of each other. Again, for a yield bearing asset, right, like let's say if you deposit USDC into Aave and you get AUSDC, typically the yield bearing asset represents two parts. One is it represents your proof. It is a proof of deposit into the pool, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't be getting the AUSDC. And it also functions as a certificate for yield accrual, right? The moment you hold AUSDC in the wallet, you are, I mean, the contract from Aave will recognize you as a recipient and will be distributing AUSDC to your wallet consistently for as long as you have the AUSDC. Now, so we thought it would make a lot of sense, right, to split up these two aspects of a yield bearing asset and represent them in two different tokens. And that is why we have the OT, ownership token, right, to represent the principal component of the yield bearing asset, and YT to represent the yield aspect of the yield bearing asset. And in doing so, we allow for these two parts to be traded independently.
Awesome. That makes sense. And I think now would be a good time to transition into, why partner with Redacted. Is there something about Butterfly and its yield that makes for an interesting sort of asset type for Pendle, or can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll do this first, and then I think Dan will also have a pretty interesting perspective. But generally speaking, right, I mean, transparently, we have been looking for use cases. And last year in December, when we introduced the Rep Memo asset on Pendle, we saw pretty healthy traction on the platform. Again, for Pendle, I think unlike many other protocols in the space right now, my impression of Pendle is that it is still a relatively complex product that is catered to a smaller group of users within the DeFi ecosystem. And because of that, right, I think we have not yet achieved a very meaningful product market fit. And that is why we have been iterating the product, and we are also experimenting with the listing of different types of assets. So in December last year, we introduced, we have been like just toying around with the idea of listing a high APY asset, because when we work with Olympus, we thought that it might be interesting to list Olympus, but unfortunately, or like maybe not unfortunately, but back then Olympus was only available on Ethereum, and for Pendle contracts, it might not be the most cost efficient, right? Because Pendle contracts are computationally intensive, and end to end, it's going to cost like at its peak, it would cost a user about $1,000. So it's not very retail friendly, and it inhibits most users from even trying out the product. So we look at alternatives on Avalanche, and because Red Memo had very decent traction, and it's also a product that we're very familiar with, and we thought it might make a lot of sense for us to support the asset and just to experiment and see how the market responds to it. So we listed Red Memo just shortly before Christmas, and we saw very healthy traction. For the first time, we saw growth after one day. So typically, when we listed other assets, right, the trading volume would plummet on the second day. But for Red Memo, because we introduced a high APY asset, we also follow up with a strategy that had been circulating back then. Basically, educating users how to increase the APY of Red Memo from 80,000% to 240,000%. And that went about quite a fair bit back in the December period. And a lot of people participated in the Pendle pool to try to experiment and replicate the strategy. And some of them actually happened to just get a pretty decent outcome out of it. So, all things said, the pool eventually ended. So we thought it might make sense for us to test the observation again on Ethereum. And Redacted is a project that we've been following for a while, and personally, and the team that we at Pendle, right, we are pretty big fan of what Redacted has done, and we believe that it has a very bright prospect. So we thought it might be a good time for us to support the asset.
Awesome. Yeah. And I would imagine that projects like Redacted or like Olympus DAO or even like Abracadabra, or not Abracadabra, sorry, Wonderland, um, they give a lot more flexibility to users than something like a typical just Aave position because of the differences in yield, right? So the way the yield moves is very different. The amount of yield is very different. The type of yield is very different. So it opens up an opportunity for some more sophisticated strategies. And on that same note, could you kind of touch on, so we touched a little bit on how somebody might be able to boost the yield that they're earning, but is there also ways for users to hedge against yield decreasing over time using Pendle, and how might they do that, for example, if they're using Butterfly?
Yeah, so guess to add on to a little bit to what Tian said, like why you support RepX Butterfly. Another big reason why we decided to go with Butterfly is that the community here is much brighter than most of the communities that we see, and people here are much more willing to try out more, I'd say rather difficult and complex strategies. And so regarding
Shout out to the
getting fixed
community.
yield, shout out to community.
It's a community with gigabrains. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that. But regarding getting fixed yield, so Pendle, again, like I previously mentioned, there are two directions that you can do with the assets that are supported on Pendle. You can either lever up on yield and get like a super increased yield exposure, but note that if the APY drops, you might lose out. But it's again without liquidation risk. But if you feel like the yield is going down, you can take the other direction where you can get fixed yield on Pendle. So on Pendle, it is as simple as just buying OT on Pendle. So if you go to our Pendle app, which is app.pendle.finance, you can go to the market page and see that the OT Butterfly is currently trading at around 400% APY, and that is the fixed yield that you're getting by just simply buying OT RepX Butterfly. Diving dip a little bit into the technical side here, but each OT will be redeemable. OT RepX Butterfly will be redeemable for 1 Butterfly worth of RepX Butterfly. So currently, each OT RepX Butterfly is trading at around $123, and assuming the price stays, eventually it'll be redeemable for $150, which is the current Butterfly price. But if it goes up, then your fixed yield is actually much, much, much higher than what it is now. But at the current rate, the APY, the locked APY that you're getting is around 400% by just simply purchasing OT.
Amazing. And I think that's all the big questions for me. Before I ask my last one, is there anybody else who wants to ask any questions that's on the stage?
I guess so another point that I can add is sorry to cut you off, but another point that I can add is it's not only the lever up on yield or getting fixed yield. Another way is for super lazy people. If you just want to get extra yield and you want to lock away your RepX Butterfly, what you can do is take your RepX Butterfly, deposit that into Pendle to mint the YT and OT, and just provide liquidity to both pools and earn extra APY by providing liquidity into Pendle with your RepX Butterfly. And yeah, mind you, that is not locked by expiry, and you can exit your position from Pendle anytime you feel like it's a good time to exit.
Amazing. That was actually one of the things I was going to ask is like, one, are there any use cases that we didn't cover? And then two, if there's any roadmap stuff that you guys want to share with the community, feel free.
Cool. I guess we shared a really cool article on project permissionless. So we call it PP, and the article is called Pendle's PP. It's a pretty interesting article, to be very honest. Check it out. But on the roadmap side, I think Tian can talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so at a high level, and this is something that we will be revealing over the next couple of months, right? Because we anticipate for the V2 to be out sometime in early Q3. So between now and then, we will be working on a series of releases to explain to users just what are some of the improvements that we can expect in V2. But generally speaking, right, I think there are a couple of things. So one is the piece. It's very associated with the piece that we have announced, and that is to make the pools permissionless. So if any project wants to enable their users to trade the yield or APY, they could do so directly on Pendle. And then secondly, we're also looking to improve the AMM itself. So basically just making it more capital efficient. And thirdly, we're also working on the token utility. And this is something that we've been talking about, but the details will be out sometime later in Q2. And of course, I think one of the big part that we really want to nail this year is the improve UI UX. Again, the context for this is that today, if you go to Pendle, you look at the dashboard. If you're looking for the dashboard for the first time, right, you would be pretty overwhelmed because from a user standpoint, if you're not familiar with the Pendle protocol, you will see OT and YT, and you probably wouldn't know what these two assets mean. So our goal here is to simplify the user experience such that you, as a user, you don't need to know what OT and YT are, and you can still get to the eventual outcome or the desired outcome, right? And without compromising on the trading experience. So yeah, at a high level, these are some of the items that we will be revealing further down, and yeah, then we'll be preparing most of the materials for the releases.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks so much, guys, for coming on. This was super insightful for me. Hopefully, it was super insightful for anybody else listening. And if some of that stuff was too big brained, the recording will be up, and you can listen to it a few times over just in case you didn't catch everything they walked through.
More information can be
also-
found in our docs actually, and yeah, it's much more like deep strategies you can explore with Pendle. Yeah, feel free to dive into the rabbit hole or just ask us, tag us in some of the chat, and yeah, we'll try to respond to them.
I actually
Yeah.
dropped
Also,
down
like,
the image for Pendle Butterfly as well as the marketplace for you guys within our community chatter.
oh, sweet, thanks. Yeah. Also, like, we're here in the community, right? And at any one point in time, you wish to learn more, understand more about strategies, take any of us. We've got a couple of other active community members here in the Redacted community as well. So yeah, I'm sure like we'll be able to help out to the best of our ability.
Awesome. And thanks again, guys. This was helpful and a really cool conversation. Before we wrap up the call, Sammy, you mentioned a few things that you wanted to touch on after the Pendle guys went. So I will let you, or Never Defined, or Kieran, or whoever wants to go, take it from here. And make sure to close your window, Sammy, before you start for safety reasons.
Yeah, so I guess like the first thing that comes to mind is like the proposal to rework the Vodium rewards. I guess other than that, there'll be a proposal coming for that next week. The second one is looking at like the cross-chain butterfly. So as like the POL and market cap KPIs have been hit like much earlier than expected, it's like enables us to like start moving on some of the things that like, you know, I guess like you guys have been asking for like crazy. Like, you know, obviously we could have done it like on day one, but just to make sure that there's a bit deeper liquidity, we didn't do it. And those two things are like lending and borrowing, and then also like cross chain butterfly, right? So I think cross chain will start on Arbitrum before AVAX and all of those things for hidden hand. The partners are like spread across like obviously mainnet. I think mainnet's moving a bit faster on this like Vodesco side than others, but also like Phantom, Arbitrum, AVAX, and Terra. So you know we can't deploy our token on all five of these chains like all at once. But what we can do is like, you know, begin the move to multi chain. Oh shit, was that me or? Anyways, yeah, it lets us begin the move to multi chain. So I think we'll start to look at like the Arbitrum deployment. First, I guess like we can put up like a temperature check in the community too to see like which one you'd want, other than Terra, you know, because Terra is not EVM. So we can see like whether it should be on AVAX first, Arbitrum, or Phantom. I'm open to any of them. I think like to me, Arbitrum makes the most sense though if I had to pick one. So yeah, I mean that's where I'm voting. And lending, right? So lending, we have some like super dope stuff we've been working on with the Fuse guys. Um, Obviously, like, you know, we can work our way into like a bunch of different like Fuse pools. I'm sure like you guys can piece that together. But looking at extending like the Fuse use case like even further. Who knows what that means? Leveraged bonding, maybe leverage staking, a bunch of different ways to play it. You know, like the ways where it works directly within the treasury, so that mass liquidation events don't hit the open market, and we can we can control, what we've been calling it is like POD, right? Protocol don't debt, where essentially like, we can manage the debt that goes out and then let the users who have highest conviction in the platform get access to the better rates than like just people looking to short us or people looking to long us as a trade or something, right? So yeah, those are the updates. That's all new news, which is fun, but like, it'll come into the forum eventually when we start rolling out all this other stuff. And like, like always, like we're still focused on V2 and stuff. So yeah.
Anything else before we wrap it up? I'm really sad that Never Defined isn't up here leaking alpha.
No, I'm with Sammy here.
Okay. Well,
Super
he's just
fire
up here.
off us.
He's up here for show. Yeah, I know. That's.
He wanted to show his new
Getting
profile
off.
pic.
I know. Look at him, dude, showing off his bear with it. It's got the
Shilling
curve chain
the
on.
cyber friends, the cyber friends.
So,
That's this Friday, by the way, guys. Just a little update. We're gonna have a Gather Town Cyber Friends event for the community. You guys can all participate in giving away some stuff.
we like free stuff. Dude, stop. Okay. Okay.
I think
Wait.
there's a community question or community
Okay.
questions, right?
Hold on. Let me look. Why can I not click?
It's
Oh
can
yeah.
you elaborate on the Pendle PP project, or is it still private sales?
It's not really private. So what's there is what's on the article is pretty much all about what we are moving towards. Is basically a project of us going permissionless. I guess elaborate more on the reason why you want to become permissionless. If you see, even though permissionless is the DeFi ethos currently, there's not too many permissionless projects out there. Most of the lending project protocols are not. I mean, by design, it's pretty difficult for them to be permissionless. But if you look at permissionless projects, they tend to do really, really well if executed right. Like compare Uniswap to other AMMs that are not permissionless, or even Balancer as a permissionless, different weighted pools AMM building, or even the Cosmos ecosystem where you have like a permissionless blockchain building a blockchain from scratch. All of these permissionless protocols tend to do really well in their own space, and Pendle will essentially be like one of the first, or even if not the first, permissionless yield tokenization protocols in DeFi that we're gonna see. And without going too much details, I guess that's pretty much the high level direction that we're going to. If you want more information, yeah, feel free to reach out to us on the Discord, or don't want to cloud the redacted community call here.
Drop your
No worries.
Discord if you'd like within the community call chatter, just so like everybody
Yeah,
else
sure.
can
Yeah,
go
and
into
shout
there.
out to Pendle PP. It looks pretty cool. So there's definitely some more resources available. All right, cool. We'll wrap it up there. We're at about 40 minutes. So this was a good call. Thanks everybody for taking the time to join. I will get this uploaded ASAP. I will not take a week to upload it, I swear, like I did last time. So I'll get this one uploaded probably tomorrow along with last week's call, and we will do it again next week. So peace out, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks for
Yeah.
having us, guys. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you.